Oh, we're going to take a look at the process, the workflow involved in adding physics shapes. You say, what are physics shapes? Well, let's take a look. Let's go into the game here and see what's going on. All right, here we go. And let's get logged in here.
Welcome to CS1.
All right, go ahead and turn that on mute. Okay, so let me pull down the sound completely there a moment. And what we're going to do is take a look at this house. I want to point out in particular this wall right here. So if I walk up or run up to the wall, I can't go through it. My player avatar can't go through it. And that is because there is a physics shape. It's basically a large invisible box that's in the same location and basically the same size as this wall that's stopping me from going through the wall. Over here, for example, if I were to try to jump through this wall, I could totally jump through that wall because there is no physics shape over there. There are physics shapes currently where these sofas are. If I were to jump up onto the sofa, I can, because there is a physics shape where that sofa is. If I go to the end table over here, there is a physics shape as well for that end table in place. So there are a few physics shapes already in place in this house, but there's a lot of places where we're missing them. Let's look out the back wall here, for example. Boom, no physics shape. I can go right through the wall. So how do we get the physics shapes in to our game? Okay, getting the model in the game is, we spent some time looking at that. We designed the model in Magic of Voxel, brought it into Blender, and then we exported it as a GLB file, and then we ended up putting it in the game and I will show you where that GLB file goes in the game. So before any longer wait, we're going to go into the game code, go to public index HTML, and we're going to go down to line 73 is the beginning of what we're calling a house entity. And it's basically the part of the code that holds our house. And if we look on line 77, we can see where the link to the house model goes. So after making the house in Magic of Voxel and bringing it into Blender temporarily to export it as a GLB file, we put the GLB file for the house. This is called Desert House. And we put it into the, if we go to the assets, we can see where that is over here. And right there is the Desert House GLB file. We click on it, copy the URL, and that URL is the URL that is found right here on line 77. So once that URL is in place, then the house shows up in the game, but it doesn't stop your character from walking through walls and so forth. Down here a little further in the code, in the index.html file, we can see we have this section called house physics, and this section is, populated with these different physics objects. Here's a physics object representing a section of the floor. Here's another physics object representing a section of the floor. Here's a physics object for sofa 1, physics object for sofa 2, for one of the walls, for second wall, for one of the end tables, and for a second end table. Over here I have, for the stairs, I had a separate section where I was going to put multiple physics objects in there for the stairs, just to show you that you can classify or you can organize your physics objects in subsections. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take one of the existing walls that's already in here, and we're going to copy it and tinker with it using some tools that we have available to us. So if we go into the game over here, what we can do first of all is to make the physics objects visible, which is what we need to be able to work with them properly. I've made or exposed a function that will turn them visible so we can see them. So how do we do that? If you press Option Command J, just open up the JavaScript console, and that's Option Command J. That's for the Mac, and you would do the equivalent for the for any other system that you're using. Inside of the JavaScript console, we can type toggle P shapes, and P stands for physics, and just open and close parentheses so that we're actually going to call the function toggle P shapes. Now look over on the left, look what happens when I execute this function. Boom. All of a sudden, the physics shapes for the different parts of the house that currently have them became visible, and that's important. So we'll close the JavaScript console right now, Option Command J in the case of a Mac, and then I'll just kind of take you around the house before we go into inspector mode. So even over here, you can even see the bird over there has a physics object. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another wall, and you use the same kind of process, same workflow to add physics shapes for all different other parts of the house, such as the stairs and so forth. The stairs, you would pretty much not model each individual stair, but you would make a box, and you would basically give it a slope, and it would be like a ramp. So the actual physics object for the stairs would be like a ramp. So let's go press Control Option I, and that will open up the inspector. Control Option I opens up the inspector, and this is built into the A-frame framework. And if we go over to the left-hand side, this is our scene graph. If we click on environment, first thing we're going to do is click on environment over there and turn the fog down to 0, so it makes it easier to see things. And then we're going to back up a little bit with 2 fingers up on the trackpad, just 2 fingers going back and up on the trackpad to zoom out, and just back down a little bit, and that gives us a decent vantage point to start our work. One thing I'm going to say here is, for example, this front wall over here, this wall 1, is pretty much, is going to be very similar in terms of the angle that it's rotated at. It's going to be pretty much parallel to the back wall, in other words. So we're going to copy this front wall, or wall 1. We'll copy it, and then we'll move it back here to this back wall over here, and we'll resize it a little bit, and then we'll get it into the game, and I'll show you how. Okay? So what we're going to do is on the left-hand side, and let me make this a little bigger so you can see it. So pull this up a little larger. So on the inside the scene, I can click on the actual object, or I can always click over here in the scene graph. But here's wall 1. Right to the right of wall 1 is this little button, Clone Entity. I'm going to do that. I'm going to click Clone Entity. Now it makes this new physics object. It's called wall 3, and that's perfect because we're going to use it for a wall. If we were going to use it for something else other than a wall, we would go on the right-hand side over here, and let's say we were going to use that physics object to be the floor for the upstairs, or the second floor. So we might, if we were going to use it for that purpose, we would rename it with the ID of floor, maybe it would be floor 3, since we already have 2 floor pieces downstairs, something like that. Okay, but there we have it. We're going to keep it as wall 3 because we are going to use it as a wall, and we're going to pull it back. We're going to pull that, and notice that it's a copy. It's the clone of the previous one, and that's in you know, in good position in terms of the basic position for the wall, except it's not quite wide enough in that one dimension. So we're going to go over here on the right hand side with the wall 3 that we've just created selected, and we're going to notice that we can manipulate some of these other aspects of it. So we're not going to change the height. Don't really need to change the width either. The width is fine. We're going to change the depth somewhat. So we'll make it a little deeper in that regard, and now we're getting closer to what we want. Make it even a little bit more deep, and might be a little bit too much. Let's see here. And overshot it just a little bit, but it's a basic idea, getting it very, very close, right on, just a little bit over. And the nice thing about having these, having that toggle P shapes is we can see how we have how it's positioned basically. If if we didn't, I can go adjust it and fine tune it. I'll get it pretty good there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that for that wall. So what do I do now? How do I get it into the game? Because what we're doing, this editing that we're performing right now is just temporary. It's temporary. It's not permanently part of the game. What we have to do to make it permanently part of the game code is go up to the right here where it says, here's the object we're working with, the physics object wall 3. We're going to click on this button here. It says copy entity HTML to clipboard. So I'll copy that. And I'm going to go back into that index HTML, and I can put it anywhere in this code. I notice that I have the walls over here, so I might as well just put it underneath wall 2, paste it in there, and notice it reboots. It actually reboots the game. So if I go back to the game, it reboots the game. So that's important to note. So if you're going to change multiple things at once, if you're going to add multiple physics objects, when you copy that code, you'll need to go and maybe paste it somewhere else temporarily before putting it into the index.html file. Otherwise, it's just going to reboot and you won't have all the code. So I'm going to jump in here. And what I'll do is show you that back, this back wall is in fact working now in terms of having a physics object. So if I go back to this wall, boom, can't go through it. Boom, can't go through it. Boom. So that's good. And you would do that same basic workflow. If I go around behind the house, try to get in over here, boom, can't go through. Boom, can't go through. Boom, again. So this was an illustration of how to use the inspector after calling toggle P shapes, which is essential so we can see the physics shape properly, and then using the A-frame inspector to copy an existing physics shape and reposition it, resize it, and then take that code and put it in the index.html file. That's the process. It's very rewarding. It takes a while to get an entire structure all outfitted with physics shapes, but it's definitely rewarding. Each step in the process, you're getting the results that you would hope to get. And I wish you the best and enjoy your day.